Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. It's day 3. We're still in Broadcast Alley recording live streaming as well. I'm your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for this segment is Mickey Bresman. He is the CEO at Semperis. Welcome, Mickey.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we're going to talk Active Directory security and I think resilience. I want to talk the security side first. So as we were preparing for this, I was going back through my notes going, wait. We've had Active Directory security solutions in the market and some successful exits by Active Directory security vendors in the market. And the first question I kind of have is like, if we've had 3 successful exits, like, have we not solved the Active Directory security problem yet?
It's a great question. I think in reality-wise, we actually had much more than 3. We had, from the top of my head, I can mention at least 5.
Okay. I knew of 3 because I think all 3 of them were sponsors at one time on our program. Yeah. So that's why I went back. I found 3.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, but yeah, there was at least 5 easily. Okay. But so something to think about. AD has been around since roughly 2000, maybe 99 is how many people look at it, which makes it today 23 years old type of a technology, which means that it have a lot of different vulnerabilities that were created by different administrators that were managing it and using it and so on. The startups that you've mentioned that had the exits, or the companies should probably say, were all solving different type of problems. And the reality is that there are still a lot of different problems with AD. What we've seen if you go by whoever you prefer to quote, if it's Microsoft Security Research, if it's the Verizon one, everybody basically quoting 9 out of 10 attacks will have AD, because it's such an interesting target. Now also, another thing to keep in mind, AD is in use by 90% of the companies out there. So now, forget the market size for me, as an attacker, I know you have one. If I want to go and breach your Salesforce as an example, I will not try to breach your Salesforce. I will go after your AD. There is plenty of solutions, probably should not call those solutions, but plenty of tools out there that can allow you to abuse AD that were created over all of those years.
Yep.
So you can buy tools to abuse AD for relatively non-expensive pricing, as funny as it might sound, or not funny. And since I know that once I get inside of AD, I own everything, you have a lot of people that are putting a lot of effort to create those tools that allows you to abuse AD. And I think that's part of the reason why we keep on seeing new and new types of attacks coming up all the time. And it's part of the reason why the problem have not been solved.
So why hasn't Microsoft fixed this? You've got Azure AD, you've got Microsoft making lots of investments in innovation on the security side, but yet they haven't tackled the security aspects of Active Directory. Don't they have an opportunity to do it? Like, why haven't they done it?
First, I'm going to start by saying that I love Microsoft. And we all use them, right?
Yeah, we all do.
But I think, if you think about what the size of the problem actually is, and what is it that any one company can do. One of the things that I always say in security in general, no one company will solve everything, at least not in the feasible future. I know that some inspire to that, but and generally speaking, Microsoft's approach was always that they like the ecosystem. So they want to make sure that there are partners that are working with them, and we're one of those, and creating solutions around the products that they provide into the market. With that said, I think Microsoft did a lot on the security side, more so in Azure AD now than in AD.
Yeah.
Kind of made the push of, we want to make sure that once you get into the cloud, which is typically more vulnerable because it's more exposed, we want to make sure that you feel very safe there. So to some degree, I would say that AD on-prem is now more of a focus of third-party providers like ourselves.
Okay. So Azure AD does have some more of the security protections in it versus the old legacy on-prem Active Directory, right?
Correct.
Okay. So are you protecting? We'll get into what you're doing actually in a second, but so are you just primarily focused then on the on-prem Active Directory environments, or does your solution also kind of overlap into Azure AD?
So we actually do both. We do AD on-prem and Azure AD. And I think maybe what is more interesting is the hybrid scenarios now that we're seeing. Because both directions, by the way, so both I've breached something in like your AD on-prem environment, I have an account, that account is being synchronized into your Azure AD, because let's be real, most companies out there are hybrid and they're all synchronized accounts. Some synchronize secrets as well, password mostly. So once I've been synchronized into your Azure AD environment, potentially now I also become a global admin account or something like that. I get privileges, and boom, I'm going into your Salesforce. And we also see some of the attacks that go the other way around. I've breached Azure AD. From there, I go back to your on-prem environment, and I own both environments.
Right. Okay.
So it's also interesting to watch kind of the evolution of what is happening in the, I'm going to call it the market, but you had for years attackers focusing on AD because that was like the #1 target. If you think about the amount of time that Azure AD has been around, it's roughly if we were now in 2012 from AD on-prem perspective. Why I'm bringing it up, 2012, we had attacks against AD, but it wasn't a lot of those as what we see now.
Right. Okay.
My point is that this is to some degree also the tipping point. So, and things now move much, much, much faster than what they used to be 10 years ago.
Right.
So what we are starting to see is attacks going specifically after Azure AD, because all of a sudden it's a much more interesting target.
Right.
If I get there, I get into your cloud applications,
right.
which are also much more interesting target as time goes by. And
because you're putting more and more sensitive data and your crown jewels in the cloud, so go there first. Tap into those. Oh, by the way, I can get synchronized on-prem. I can go after all your on-prem assets later too if I wanted to, right?
Correct. So we still see much more attacks going against AD on-prem, but with that said, we're starting to see an uptick in attacks going against Azure AD. And by the way, others as well. I mean, Okta has been breached, as you probably know.
Yeah.
Anything that can be interesting will be a target.
Yeah, I mean, credentials, getting to act, I mean, that's the first step, right? You get credentials, get those credentials in the environment, escalate privileges, and then move pretty much wherever you want. Like, it's the common case, right?
That's why they call those the keys to the kingdom, right?
Right, yeah.
You get those, you can do, by the way, two different aspects. One, potentially as an attacker, I'm going after because I want to steal your data. So I want the permissions to go and enter whatever system and take whatever I want. The second one is the ransomware, or the wiper situation. Wiper basically means I don't want your money. I just want to destroy you.
Yeah, I want to destroy you. Yeah.
And if I take down your permission provider, you can't do anything because you can't log into anything. No data, nothing can authenticate you. So you're basically completely locked out. And unfortunately, in ransomware attacks, if you remember the Maersk story as an example, 9 days just to recover their AD. Now keep in mind that while AD is down, you cannot recover anything else because everything depends on AD.
Right.
So if I can get inside of your AD or Azure AD for the sake of discussion, I own your environment.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So you said each of these companies, these 5 different initial startups, are all kind of solving a different security problem.
Yep.
How are you solving the Active Directory security problem? Like, what's unique about your approach that maybe the other 5 haven't done?
Sure. So I think, first of all, the way that we approach it, we refer to that as the cyber resiliency challenge.
Okay.
And when I'm thinking about cyber resiliency, to me, it basically means I want to cover the entire attack kill chain. I want to think about what do I do to prevent it, so the pre-attack stage.
Yep.
I want to think how fast can I detect it and then contain it, so this is the during the attack stage. But also I'm being realistic, and I know that at some point things will fail. There potentially be a human mistake, there is multiple different reasons why. So I want to be able to help with a customer, even in a situation where they've been maybe encrypted end-to-end, kind of the late stage of the attack. Or the other scenario that we see quite often is that I, as an attacker, now own the environment, as we spoke about it before. What do you do then?
Right.
And we are the most complete solution in the market today, where we basically provide the pre, the during, and the post, everything under the same platform, everything plays nicely together. On the resiliency, and that's to me what's the resiliency side is. On the resiliency side, the last stage when it comes to you've been breached, and I'll give you maybe a story to give you some understanding of what it means. We get a call from a customer that was not a customer of ours before the incident. They had their AD environment breached. In their case, the firewalls were authenticated against AD as well. They come into the office one morning and they find out everything is completely open, no rules on the firewall. Traffic, as you can imagine, in and out. The attacker can do whatever they want.
Yep.
They go in, they change all of the passwords, close all the firewalls and so on. Yay, gain control of the environment. Next morning, the exact same thing happens again. Everything is open, so they understand, okay, we don't control this environment at all. There is something in our AD that owns this environment.
Yep.
So in most cases, unless you have a resiliency program in place, you're lost.
So basically what you're saying is I needed a known good state that I could roll back to.
So this is where the challenge actually becomes. You're right, but.
Okay.
The challenge of trying to figure out what is a good known state is almost impossible to solve. The reason being, most likely you've been breached months ago. The attacker was inside of your environment for God knows how long. You cannot really go back months ago because the amount of data that you will lose because of it is something that you will not survive as an organization. So we took a completely different approach.
Okay.
We said, let's decouple AD from Windows, the operating system on which it is running, so that any malware that have been deployed, any rootkits and so on, once we back up the environment, if we recover to a clean OS, we are not bringing none of that with us. Just no executables at all, making sure that that's not traveling with us.
Oh, interesting.
Then we said, another challenge that we've seen with ransomware attacks, maybe the environment does not exist anymore at all. So maybe I was running even a hardware type of machines. By the way, it's highly recommended by Microsoft. So maybe I had HP, Dell, any one of those machines running my DCs. Everything has been encrypted, firmware type of an attack. I lost the environment completely. I need to move to Azure or something like that, or AWS or GCP, any one of the cloud providers. The challenge in the past was that you had infrastructure dependency. So you could not take a backup from here to there.
Right.
We eliminated it completely. We're agnostic to the infrastructure. You took a backup of whatever that machine was. You created it wherever you want. We changed IP addresses on the fly. So generally speaking, we basically solved the challenge of what happens in those scenarios where we lost control completely. Literally, 3 clicks, you are done. They're saying, I used to be here. That's no longer relevant. I'm going there. I used to have 50 DCs. I only have 5 now. Do your thing. The machine, the system basically does the whole thing. And what we also found out is most customers actually want the human interaction as well, because you want somebody that's been there, done that, and seen. So we have an incident response team that is focused specifically on the identity side of things, and we're seeing on average 1 or 2 incidents a month. Now, keep in mind, incident for me is not you have a mailbox.
It's not full-blown ransomware per se.
No, it actually is. For me, an incident is not. Company will not be calling me because they have a mailbox that have been breached, or they call me because it's DM.
Okay.
Like either they fully lost control of the environment or it's been encrypted. So because we're seeing those type of situations on a monthly basis, when we come in, we have playbooks, we know exactly what to do. First thing, don't panic. There is ways to deal with it. It's not the end of the world. And we basically start to work with the customer from that point, getting back the control of the environment, recovering if needed, forensic that comes after that, making sure the attacker is really, really out.
Got it. And then you're putting the resilience component in place so that it doesn't happen again.
Correct. So then we try to do as much as we can on the prevention, because if we can, let's make sure that we don't even get there.
So what are the types of prevention controls that you can actually put in place with Active Directory?
Multiples. So we have, on the pre-attack stage, I would say, indicators of exposure, indicators of compromise. Those are the things that you would mostly be focusing on. We have about 150 of those between AD and Azure AD, and also some that go specifically for the hybrid scenarios. Everything that we find will be mapped to the MITRE or attack or defend frameworks. We also provide the ANSI framework, just because we have different type of requirements from customers. And then we also allow you to understand how bad it is what we find. The idea there is that once we found something that it can be potentially lead to a breach in your environment, close the gap as fast as you can before the attacker actually does it. So if you remember the summer of 2021, there were about 3 0 days coming out of Microsoft, one after the other. Petit Pitam was the one that mostly discussed, but there were actually 2 other ones that were as bad. What we did on our security research team, we released indicators every 3 days. So once there was a discovery of what it is, how it's operates, 3 days after you as a customer got an indicator, you knew where you have the vulnerabilities, you went ahead and you closed the gaps. So that would be one thing that you can do to prevent. Just scan your environment and make sure that you close the gaps before somebody finds them.
Right.
The second thing, you can actually harden your environment to some degree. You can set up policies in place. Many companies will deploy a PAM, like Delaney, CyberArk. There is multiple of those. But you need to make sure that you actually enforce the usage of those. Because what happens with many of the PAM solutions is that if now somebody does something that has nothing to do with the PAM, but it is a privileged account in the AD environment, the PAM will not know about it. Or will know about it 10 hours later, which is way too late.
Yeah, way too late.
So if you use a solution that can let you know what changes are taking place, who is making those, what values are they changing, what objects are they touching, and then also prevent it if it's not supposed to be happening. A change happened, it's not aligned with our policy, undo it immediately, don't keep it there. That's some of the things you can do to prevent things.
Awesome. Mickey, this has been enlightening. I didn't know we still had a big Active Directory security problem. Thank you for joining us.
It was great. Thank you.
If you want to learn more about how to protect your Active Directory environment, please visit securityweekly.com/Semperis RSAC. Semperis RSAC.
Thank you.